nefesh av harachaman, yedid nefesh av harachaman. Page 128. Mishochav El ritzonecha mishochav la 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 El ritzonecha Yarutz avdecha kemo ayal Ishtachavei la 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 El Hadarecha Yedid nefesh av harachaman Yedid nefesh av harachaman Mishochav El ritzonecha La 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 El ritzonecha Yarutz avdecha kemo ayal Ishtachavei la 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 El muhadrecha. The very top of page 128. Hine matov umanayim shevet achim gam yachad. Hine matov umanayim shevet achim gam yachad. Hine matov shevet achim gam yachad. Hinei matov shevet achim gam yachad. Hinei matov umanayim shevet achim gam yachad. Hinei matov umanayim shevet achim gam yachad. Shabbat shalom, everyone. We light our Shabbat candles. You'll find our blessings beginning on, they're all on page 120, just a few pages back from where you are right now. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel As we turn to page 130, we'll start to make our way through our Kabbalat Shabbat to use these psalms that are on the next several pages as a way of saying goodbye to each day of the week and bring ourselves into the peace of Shabbat. We begin with one of our psalms of praise, Psalm 95, Lechu neranena l'Adonai, let us sing joyfully to God. Lechu neranena, lechu neranena, lechu neranena l'Adonai. Lechu neranena, lechu neranena, lechu neranena l'Adonai. Naria, naria, l'tzuri sheinu, nikadma fana b'toda. Naria, naria, l'tzuri sheinu, v'zmirot naria lo. Lechu neranena, lechu neranena, lechu neranena l'Adonai. Lechu neranena, Psalm 96 on page 131 is the bottom paragraph, these words. May the heavens be happy, may the earth rejoice, may the sea also be happy and all that fills it, as all of God's creation give thanks for that very creation. Yismechu hashamayim, Yismechu hashamayim, Yismechu hashamayim, v'tageh haaretz. Yismechu hashamayim, Yismechu hashamayim, Yismechu hashamayim, v'tageh haaretz. Yehiram hayam, Yehiram hayam, Yehiram hayam, umelo. Yehiram hayam, Yehiram hayam, Yehiram hayam, umelo. Yismechu hashamayim, Yismechu hashamayim, Yismechu hashamayim, v'tageh haaretz. From Psalm 97, page 132. The light is sown for the righteous, and for those who are good-hearted, there will be happiness. The last 4 lines from the bottom of the page on 132. Or zaru alat tzadik, u'yishrei lev simcha. Or zaru alat tzadik, u'yishrei lev simcha. Or zaru alat tzadik, u'yishrei lev simcha. Or zaru alat tzadik, u'yishrei lev simcha, u'yishrei lev simcha. Or zaru alat tzadik, u'yishrei lev simcha, u'yishrei lev simcha. Lai 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 lai, lai 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 lai, lai 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 lai, lai 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 lai, lai 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 lai, lai lai. Zarua lat tzadik, u'yishrei lev simcha. Or zarua lat tzadik, u'yishrei lev simcha. We'll read together in English at the bottom of page 133 from Psalm 98. A psalm. Sing to Adonai a new song, for God has worked wonders. God's right hand, God's holy arm has won God victory. Adonai has manifested God's victory, has displayed God's triumph in the sight of the nations. God was mindful of God's steadfast love and faithfulness toward the house of Israel. All the ends of the earth beheld the victory of our God. Raise a shout to Adonai, all the earth. Break into joyous songs of praise. From Psalm 99, we sing the last 3 lines of the psalm. We bow down at God's holy mountain and try to imitate God in the way that God stands, in a way filled with holiness. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu vehishtachavu lehar kodsho. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu vehishtachavu lehar kodsho. Ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu romemu. Ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu romemu. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu vehishtachavu lehar kodsho. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu vehishtachavu lehar kodsho. A final psalm of praise of these 6 psalms that we come through in Kabbalat Shabbat, Psalm 29, page 136 and 137. We'll read together on both pages in English. A psalm of David. Ascribe to Adonai, O divine beings. Ascribe to Adonai glory and strength. Ascribe to Adonai the glory of God's name. Bow down to Adonai, majestic in holiness. The voice of Adonai is over the waters. The God of glory thunders, Adonai over the mighty waters. The voice of Adonai is power. The voice of Adonai is majesty. The voice of Adonai breaks cedars. Adonai shatters the cedars of Lebanon. God makes Lebanon skip like a calf, Sirion like a young wild ox. The voice of Adonai kindles flames of fire. The voice of Adonai convulses the wilderness. Adonai convulses the wilderness of Kadesh. The voice of Adonai causes hinds to calve and strips forests bare. And while in God's temple all say glory. Adonai sits enthroned sovereign forever. May Adonai grant strength to God's people. May Adonai bestow on God's people well-being. The last two lines of that psalm in the Hebrew, page 137. Lai 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 lai. Adonai oze amo yitain Adonai yivarech et amo v'shalom. Adonai oze amo yitain Adonai yivarech et amo v'shalom. Lai 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 lai. Page 138 and 139. We welcome in the image of the Shabbat bride. Lecha dodi likrat kala yalalai 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 b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha dodi likrat kala yalalai 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 b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Shamor v'zachor b'dibur echad hishmi'anu el hamiyuchad. Adonai echad, Shemo echad, l'shem u'tiferet ve'letchila. Lecha dodi likrat kala yalalai 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 b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha dodi likrat kala yalalai 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 b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Likrat Shabbat lechu v'nelcha Mikor habracha, Erosh mikedem nesucha, Sof ma'aseh b'machshavat techila. Lecha dodi likrat kala yalalai 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 b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha dodi likrat kala yalalai 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 b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Verse number 5. Oreri kiva oreh uri shir da'beri kevod Adonai alayich nigla. Lecha dodi likrat kala yalalai 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 b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha dodi likrat kala yalalai 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 b'nei Shabbat nekabela. We rise, we face the door. As we come to verse number 9, as we welcome into our midst the beauty of the Shabbat bride. Boi v'shalom ateret bala gam b'simcha uv'tzola toch emunei am segula boi chala chala. Lecha dodi likrat kala, yalalai, 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 ne Shabbat nikabela. Lecha dodi likrat kala, yalalai, 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 ne Shabbat nikabela. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. As we've greeted the Shabbat bride, we'll greet each other. Turn to your neighbors and wish everybody Shabbat Shalom. For those of you joining us online, on templeshalom.com or on our YouTube page, Shabbat Shalom to all of you as well. All righty, well, Shabbat Shalom again, everyone, as we find our seats. We'll turn to page 140 in our Siddur as we sing a psalm of Shabbat. As Shabbat has come in and we've greeted Shabbat and Shabbat has greeted us. Mizmor Shir L'Yom HaShabbat, let us sing a song of Shabbat. Tov Lehodot L'Adonai, it is good on this Shabbat to give thanks to God. Mizmor Shir L'Yom HaShabbat, Tov Lehodot L'Adonai, Lizamer L'Shimcha Elyon, Lizamer L'Shimcha Elyon. Mizmor Shir L'Yom HaShabbat, Tov Lehodot L'Adonai, Lizamer L'Shimcha Elyon, Lizamer L'Shimcha Elyon. Nahagid Baboker Chastecha, Emunatecha Baleilot, Alei Asor Ve'alei Navel Alei Higayon V'Chinor. Mizmor Shir L'Yom HaShabbat, Tov Lehodot L'Adonai, Lizamer L'Shimcha Elyon, Lizamer L'Shimcha Elyon. Ki simachtani Adonai b'fo'olecha, b'maaseh yadecha aranei. Ma gadlu maasecha Adonai me'od, amku machshevotecha. Mizmor Shir L'Yom HaShabbat, ולהודות לאדוני, ולזמר לשמך עליון, ולזמר לשמך עליון, ולזמר לשמך עליון, ולזמר לשמך עליון. If you'll read with me, please, in English, the very bottom of that page, page 140, the last 4 lines in the English. The righteous bloom like a date palm. They thrive like a cedar in Lebanon. Planted in the house of Adonai, they flourish in the courts of our God. In old age, they still produce fruit. They are full of sap and freshness, attesting that Adonai is upright, my rock in whom there is no wrong. Those English words are the last 8 lines of the Hebrew on the page here. Tzadika tamar yifrach ke'erez balvanon yiskei shetuli beveit Adonai bechatzrot Eloheinu yafrichu od yenuvun b'seva disheni vera'ananim yiyu lehagid ki yashar Adonai Velo avlatabo. If you'll turn to page 144, we make our way out of Kabbalat Shabbat and into our Ma'ariv evening service. Yitkada v'yitkada shemei rabba Yalmad yivrach yirutei v'yamlich malchutei B'chayechon uvyomechon Uv'chayei dechol Beit Yisrael Ba'agala Uvizman karivim eru Amen Yehei shmei rabba mevorach Le'olam u'lam me'almaya Yitbarach, Vishtabach, Vitpar, Vidroham, Vidnase, Vitadar, Vitale, Vitalal, Shemi, Dukudisha, Burihu, Leilam, in Koberchata, Vishirata, Tushbetchata, Venechemata, Damiron, Be'alma, Vimeru, Amen. Well, rise. Baruch Hu on page 146. Before we say this prayer, there's a beautiful little meditation at the bottom of page 147 that will give us something to think about perhaps during the Baruch Hu. What does it mean to be called to worship? All serious activity requires preparation. The prayers and blessings that precede Baruch Hu are warm-ups for the individual. Now communal prayers begin. The leader asks a question, are you ready to pray? And we respond, yes, let us pray. Lai, 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 Barechu et Adonai HaMevorach Baruch Adonai HaMevorach HaMevorach Le'olam Va'ed Can all be seated. We continue giving thanks for creation, We'll read together at the top of page 149. Praise to you, Adonai our God, from whom the evening flows. Your wisdom sets the way on which time and season glide. Your breath guides the sail of the stars. Creator of the tide of time and light, you guide the current of day into night. As heaven spans to infinity, you set its course for eternity. Praise to you, Adonai our God, from whom the evening flows. El Chai v'Kayam, Tamid Yimloch Aleinu, Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai, Ha'ma'arif Ha'ravim. Lai 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 lai, lai 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 lai, lai 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 lai, lai 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 lai, lai 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 lai. Lai, 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 lai. Page 150. With everlasting love, you offered your people Israel by teaching us Torah and mitzvot, laws and precepts. Therefore, Adonai our God, when we lie down and when we rise up, we will meditate on your laws and your commandments. We will rejoice in your Torah forever. Day and night we will reflect on them, for they, the words of Torah, are our life, and doing them lengthens our days. Never remove your love from us, this love that you express to us through your Torah. Praised are you, God, who loves your people Israel. Ahavat olam Beit Yisrael Amcha ahavta Amcha ahavta Torah u'mitzvot Chukim u'mishpatim Otanu Otanu limadita Al kein Adonai Eloheinu b'shokvenu v'kumeinu nasiach b'chukecha v'nismach b'divrei Toratecha u'v'mitzvotecha le'olam va'ed ki heim chayenu Orech yameinu Uvahem nehege yomam velayla Nehege yomam velayla Ve'ahavatcha al tasir Mimenu le'olamim Baruch atah Adonai Ohev Amo Yisrael, Ohev Amo Yisrael. We join together in the words of Shema, page 152 and 153. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Le'olam Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavcha uv'chol nafshecha uv'chol me'odecha ve'hayu הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך וקשרתם מאוד על ידיך והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותי והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם אני אדוני אלוהיכם אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם לאלוהים אני אדוני אלוהיכם Adonai Elohechem Emet. We'll read together on 155 a poetic rendition of the Hebrew that we just chanted together. Love your God with every heartbeat, with every breath, with every conscious act. Keep in mind the words I command you today. Teach them to your children. Talk about them at work, whether you are tired or you are rested. Let them guide the work of your hands. Keep them in the forefront of your vision. Do not leave them at the doorpost of your house or outside your gate. They are reminders to do all my mitzvot, so that you can be holy for God. I am Adonai your God. I led you out of Egypt to become your God. I am Adonai your God. Page 157, as we come into the Geula, our prayer of redemption. This week in our Torah portion that we'll read tomorrow morning, we leave Egypt. We don't read these words. These are the words we'll have on page 158. We'll read those next week, the next Shabbat, on Shabbat Shirah, the Shabbat that has the Song of the Sea with Mi Chamocha in it. But this week we leave Egypt. We remind ourselves that in Hebrew, as well as in Arabic, the name of Egypt has more than a meaning of just a place on the map. In Hebrew, Mitzrayim, in Arabic, Mitzer, both words mean narrow. Egypt is the narrow place. If you don't live close to the Nile, you don't live because there's no water unless you found a nice oasis somewhere out in the desert. And there are a few, but not many. But we leave those narrow places and we make our pathway toward freedom. It's not only a history lesson of the Jewish people, but it's a contemporary thought for all of us each and every day. What are the narrow places in our lives? Our own personal narrow places, our community narrow places, our national narrow places, our worldly narrow places. What are those narrow places that enslave us, and how do we find our way toward the freedom that sits just right outside? And so we read these words at the top of 157 as we come into our freedom prayer. Standing on the parted shores of history, we still believe what we were taught before ever we stood at Sinai's foot, that wherever we go, it is eternally Egypt, that there is a better place, a promised land, that the winding way to that promise passes through the wilderness, that there is no way to get from here to there except by joining hands, marching together. And we sing those words of that march, page 158, our Song of Freedom. מי כמוך נעדר בקודש, נורא תהילות אוסף אלה, נורא תהילות אוסף אלה. מלכותך נעו בניך, חוקי ים לפני משה ומרים, זה אלי ענו ואמרו, זה אלי ענו ואמרו, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. ונאמר, יפדה אדוני את יעקב, וגואלו מיד חזק ממנו. ברוך אתה אדוני, גואל ישראל. Each night as we lie down, we pray that God will spread a shelter of peace over us to protect us through the night. This idea that comes from the Kabbalistic vision that God protects our souls through the night as we sleep, since we're awake and not aware of what our souls are doing or not doing, what might attack them. And so we say, please God, watch over us and keep us from all the evils of the world while we sleep. And then tomorrow morning, we'll say a blessing, thanking God for returning our souls. The third line of the song, that's written into song, I should say, from this prayer, Ufros Aleinu Sukat Shlomecha, please God, spread a shelter of your peace and of your completeness over us. Page 160, line 3. Ufros Aleinu Sukat, Sukat Shlomecha, Ufros Aleinu Sukat, Sukat Shlomecha. Yalai lai lai, yalai lai lai, yalai lai 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 lai, yalai lai lai, yalai lai lai, yalai lai lai, yalai lai 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 lai. Ufros aleinu sukat, sukat shlomecha. We'll read together the top of page 163. We are a people in whom the past endures, in whom the present is inconceivable, without moments gone by. The Exodus lasted a moment enduring forever. What happened once upon a time happens all the time. Shabbat becomes a reminder. We say it in the Kiddush. Each time we say the Kiddush with the wine on Friday night, we say that the Kiddush Shabbat represents a reminder of the 6 days of creation and the seventh day of rest, but also a reminder of our deliverance from Egypt that begins in this week's Torah portion, in our recollections of it. And so we sing these words of Vishamru, the reminder of Shabbat and the connection between us and God, a covenant of Shabbat, a covenant of freedom, and a covenant of peace. Vishamru v'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat, la'asot et ha-Shabbat lidorotam, berit olam b'ni uvein b'nei Yisrael oti Sheshet yamin asa Adonai et hashamayim ve'et haaretz uv'yom hashvi'i shavat shavat vayinafash shavat shavat vayinafash v'shameru shavat shavat vayinafash v'shameru shavat Shabbat vayinafash. There's a beautiful saying at the bottom of page 163. It comes from Achad Ha'am. That's not his real name. That was his pen name. His real name was Ginsburg. But Achad Ha'am actually means one of the people, which gives you the idea of how he wrote what he wrote. I'm just one of the people. You can visit his grave in the Trumpeldor Cemetery in Tel Aviv. And there's different pieces that he's written that are available there in books that they have at his grave, some of his beautiful philosophies. But he said this, and I think it's held true for all of time: more than the Jewish people have kept Shabbat, Shabbat has kept the Jewish people. A really beautiful thing to think about as we rise for our Amidah, page 164. We'll join in the first few paragraphs together. Then we'll take time for our own prayers on the even pages in the Hebrew, in the traditional words, in the odd-numbered pages in poetic renditions, or the words that we find written on our own hearts, in our own minds, in our own souls, and that's through page 180 and 181. But first we begin together on 164. Adonai sifatai tiftach ufi agid tehilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu, Elohei Avotenu v'Imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah. Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor v'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, V'Konei Hakol, V'Zocher Chaste Avot v'Imahot, U'Mevi Geula Livnei V'Nehem, L'Ma'an Shmo Be'ahava, Melech Ozer U'Moshia U'Magen, Baruch Atah Adonai, Magen Avraham ve'ezrat Sarah, Atah Gibor le'olam Adonai, Mechaye HaKol Atah Rav le'Hoshia, Mashiv HaRuach u'Morid HaGashem, Mechalkel Chayim be'Chesed, Mechaye HaKol be'Rachamim Rabim, Somech Noflim ve'Rofei Cholim, Umatir Asurin, Umekayem Emunato, Lishene Afar, Micha Mocha Baal Givurot, Umido Melach, Melech Mimit, Umechaye, Umat Miach Yeshua, V'ne'eman atah l'chayot hakol, Baruch atah Adonai, Mechayei ha'kol, Atah kadosh, U'shimcha kadosh, U'kadoshim b'chol yom yahalelucha selah, Baruch atah Adonai, Ha'el ha'kadosh. We continue silently. When you're finished with your silent prayers, please be seated. 180 in the middle of the page. Yiyu l'ratzon imrefi ve'hegyon libi lifanecha Adonai tzuri Adonai tzuri v'goali Yiyu l'ratzon imrefi ve'hegyon libi lifanecha Adonai tzuri Adonai tzuri v'goali We take a moment to think of those who are in need of healing. We ask for God to bring refuah shlema, complete healing for April, David, and Dylan Morris, Scott Slinger, Chaya Reza Bat Melech Baruch, David Ben Label, Carly Johnson Walker, Corey Chapman, Riley McGee, William Benden, Darren Black, Naomi Talia Bat Sarah, Genendel Bat Sima, Don Emmerich, Rachel Bat Avraham Vasara, Susan Shank, Stanley Sachs, Reuven Ben Shlomo Mordechai Vitzipora, Rivka Bat Pearl, Eileen Hamburg, Lisa Lead, Ishav Zaza, Lori Rolfi, Cindy Bat Rivka, Kathy Twerdock, and Paulette Fry. If we have any other names for healing, anybody on this side with names for healing? Thank you. Any others on this side of the room? Over here on this side of the room, names for healing.
I don't have a single name. About 90 minutes ago, a jet took off from a small airport in Philadelphia, about a mile and a half from where I grew up, crashed, burned, and set an entire neighborhood on fire.
So pray for healing for that neighborhood as well. Any other names for healing? For all those we've named, for all those who are in need. Page 371 in the middle of your Siddur. Nisheberach avoteinu mikor habracha leimoteinu. May the source of strength who bless the ones before us help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say Amen. Misheberach imotenu mikor habracha le'avoteinu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say Amen. It is January 31st, and as the calendar falls, this is the fifth Friday night of the month of January, and it's been my custom for a few decades now. When there's a fifth Friday night of the month, instead of a regular drash, a regular sermon, it becomes Ask the Rabbi night. So you get to decide the topic of what we're going to have a sermon about tonight and a little learning. So it's up to you. This is And please remember, it's not Stump the Rabbi night. I'm not going to quote from Masechet Makot, page 32, the fourth line. There's some pages of Talmud I could do that, but not that particular page. But what do you want to know about Judaism? What does Judaism say about this, that, or the other thing? And you got the first one?
I want to know how your trip to Washington was.
You want to know? So I'm only going to answer that partially. The question was, how was my trip to Washington, D.C.? And the reason I'm only going to answer that partially is because a few weeks from now, our teenagers are going to come here and tell you how the trip to Washington was. But so the short answer on that, January 10th through the 13th, I was in Washington, D.C. I was there with a program called Litakein, which means to repair, like the idea of Tikkun Olam. It's a program that's run by the URJ, the Reform Movement, and since we kind of affiliate, we're not officially affiliate, but we're a Reform and conservative blended kind of community here. We participated in the program. We took 8 teenagers from our group. They spend the weekend having Shabbat with other teens. There were about 250 on our weekend. They have, and usually the weekends are anywhere from 200 to 400 students. Just knowing where we live, that should be amazing to you, because our teenagers sat in a room and said, there's 250 Jewish teenagers in this room. We've never been in a room with more than like 10 Jewish teenagers. So that was an amazing thing for them. And then they sit and study about lobbying, and they sit and study about different social justice issues and other issues as it goes, and then they write a lobbying speech and they go visit their members of Congress. And so they visited both Senator Bennett and Senator Hickenlooper, and then they also visited with Jeff Crank, who is our brand new, 2.5 weeks now, I think is what it is, our new congressman from our district here. They didn't get to meet with any of the people because all of the members of Congress spend the weekend back in Colorado, but they met with their staffs to talk about stuff, and they were able to talk actually with the chief legislative analyst for each of the senators and for the representative as well. And our kids did amazingly well. You would be amazed that the kids were like, we don't know, because there's Republicans and there's Democrats, and we don't know how. All 3 legislative directors for the 3 offices praised our kids for how much work they put into their lobbying, it was interesting that they had a proposal. One of the things, and they'll talk about it a little bit more, one of the proposals that they had, both Democratic senators liked both proposals that they had. Our Republican representative liked one of their proposals and not the other, but the kids were really proud of themselves. I made sure that they were, because I asked the legislative director for Congressman Crank, you just said to our kids in your response to them that you're probably not going to vote for this bill. As a matter of fact, I know you're never going to vote for this bill, right? And he said, yeah, that's right. But you said you would bring up this issue and talk with Representative Crank about this issue. And he said, yes, I will. And without the kids talking to me, I never would have brought it up in the staff meeting. We have a different solution than what you kids brought to us as a solution. We agree that it's a problem. We have a different solution, and I would have never brought it up to the congressman had you not brought it up in this meeting with us. So you might not have convinced us to vote for bill, whatever number it was, but you did convince me to talk to the congressman about this issue. So pretty cool thing that our kids did. So, and aside from that, it was very cold. And as we were walking around, but our kids did a beautiful job with their lobbying speeches. All 3 offices, they all, among their comments, the kids probably won't tell you this, but I will. All 3 offices said to our kids, I don't know if they were lying or not, they might have been, but I'm going to say they weren't. They all said, kids from Colorado are way better than kids from any of those other 49 states. You guys did fantastic, and they really did. Our kids were great, and a few weeks from now, they're going to come to Shabbat services. We'll advertise it and let everybody know. We're playing with dates with their high school schedules, but they're going to come and talk to us about the stuff that they learned on their trip, and it was fantastic. So, yeah, thank you for asking, and our kids were awesome. Another question, Don. Yeah.
Before I converted, I always wanted to donate my body to science. Is that allowed, being Jewish?
So the question for those who didn't hear it, does Judaism allow for donating your body to science? The short answer is very simple, yes. a little bit more explanation of it. So one of the things that the Talmud tells us is that we can actually break almost every law of the Torah in the name of pikuach nefesh, which means to save a life. Now, that idea is discussed in a few different ways in the Talmud. One, it talks about the idea of pikuach nefesh, but it also says in Masechet Sanhedrin of the Talmud, it says that if you save a life, it's as if you've saved the entire universe. Now, there is another section of the Talmud that quote is a little different, and most people don't quote from that because they don't think it sounds as nice, because it says, if you save a Jewish life, it's as if you save the entire universe. But in Masechet Sanhedrin, it says any life. So there was a rabbi by the name of Eliezer Weinberg. He died about, I think, something like 20 years ago or something like that. He was known as the Tzitz Eliezer. He was an ultra-Orthodox rabbi. He lived in Israel, and he wrote about 20 volumes of a book that's where he got the name Tzitz Eliezer as his nickname. His series of books is called the Tzitz Eliezer, the Wisdom of Eliezer. And he was considered in the ultra-Orthodox world the foremost authority on medical ethics. And interestingly, you would think he's an ultra-Orthodox rabbi, that he would be very conservative, and I don't mean politically conservative, I mean medically conservative about all medical ethical things. He's the guy who first wrote the piece in his Tzitz Eliezer that Israel uses, that if someone dies, and this was a debate for a little while in Israel until he wrote his teshuvah, his response to this, that if someone dies, that there should not be any question as to whether the body parts that are going to be donated, because in his mind there was no question whatsoever, there should be no question as to whether those body parts are going to go to a Jew or a Christian or a Muslim. That those body parts should go to any person who needs them. And not only should go to anyone who needs them, but he actually, according to his ruling, forbid anyone from asking the question. So is it allowed in Judaism? Yes. Does it happen in Judaism? All the time. And we know that there are little Jewish kids in Israel. There was actually just recently a surgery of a Palestinian who died, and the eyes went to a Jewish kid in Israel. And we also know of a Jewish person who died. This also happened just last week. It was just in the news in Israel. There was a car crash in Tel Aviv, and several people died in the car crash. And they said about half the organs went to Jews and half the organs went to Muslims. Now, why is that in the news? Because I just told you that Tzitz Eliezer said that you're not supposed to ask. Because the news media doesn't care about that part of what the Tzitz Eliezer taught in his writings, because that doesn't provide for them to have a really great news story. And it is a great news story that the people who died in this car crash, and a tragedy for them and a tragedy for their families, but every one of them was a donor, and eyes and hearts and lungs and things went to Jews and Muslims and Christians and everybody in Israel who were able to do that. And so yes, it is. There, however, the other end of that, on your driver's license, the little thing that says you're a donor, there's no requirement, according to any Jewish law, to be an organ donor, but it is permissible and encouraged, but not required by Orthodox Jewish law. So there you go. There's the answer to that question.
Can you talk about B'Tselem Elohim and tattoos and piercings a little bit?
I can. Next question. Oh, you wanted me to... I thought that was a yes or no question. Can I? And the answer is yes. Yes, I can. So, B'Tselem Elohim is a Hebrew term that means in the image of God. It comes from the first chapter of the book of Genesis that says when God created Adam and Eve that we were made B'Tselem Elohim, in the image of God. By the way, fun Hebrew vocabulary stuff. B'Tselem, Tselem, if you get B means in and Tselem means image. Tsilum means photograph. So biblical word coming into modern Hebrew. But the ideas of piercings and tattoos. So tattoos are forbidden, specifically forbidden in the Torah and in the Talmud. Now, many of you have heard, how many of you have heard that you can't be buried in a Jewish synagogue if you have a tattoo? Raise your hand if you've heard that. That is, a lot of you have not heard that? I'm surprised. I thought a lot of people heard that.
Because you said synagogue.
Oh,
So
I said...
no one's going to be buried in a Jewish synagogue.
That's true. We'll try that again. Jewish cemetery. Thank you for pointing out. I was really good with the Hebrew vocabulary. Now with the English vocabulary, I'm terrible. So How many of you heard you cannot be buried in a Jewish cemetery? Did I get the vocabulary right that time? There you go. Jews, you've heard that you cannot be buried in a Jewish cemetery if you have a tattoo. Raise your hand if you've heard that. That is absolutely not true. Okay? People say to their children, you can't, they come to me, they say, Rabbi, please tell my child they can't get a tattoo because then they can't be buried in a Jewish cemetery. And I say, I can't tell your child that because that's not true. What I can tell your child is, you can't get a tattoo because the Torah forbids it. Has nothing to do with a cemetery. The Torah says no. Now, as far as piercings go, that's a different story. We actually have piercings in the Torah. The piercings that we read about in the Torah are actually the piercings of slavery. And so if someone is released from indentured servitude and they don't want to leave their master, you can actually, the way it's described in the Torah is this, it's in the book of Leviticus. You can go up to the mezuzah of a door. I know you all think mezuzah means that little thing that you put on your doorpost, but mezuzah actually means doorpost. It's actually, right, that's a doorpost, the thing on top. Anybody? It's a SAT word. Starts with an L. Lintel, very good. You guys get extra points for knowing that word, very good. All right, so we have the lintel on the top, right? And we have the doorpost on the side, and you're supposed to go to the doorpost. You take an awl, and you put the awl at the ear right here, and you put it on the ear, and you hit it with a hammer until there's a hole in the ear. Aren't you all in pain now? And then it's pierced, and you can put an earring there to show that you have been a freed indentured servant, but you've chosen to stay with your master. And so this is the first place that we read about piercing in the Torah. And so Judaism does allow for piercing. However, it allows for, it depends on what part of the Jewish world you're in. If you're in the Reformed Jewish world, most piercings are fine. If you're in the conservative or Orthodox Jewish world, piercings on anything on your body other than your ears is forbidden. Okay? And in some parts of the Hasidic world, even ear piercing is forbidden. So it's kind of across the spectrum of that. Tattoos are an absolute no. Can you be buried in a Jewish cemetery if you have a tattoo? Yes, no one's going to kick you out. If you think about this from a more sad perspective, could you imagine if someone said to the Holocaust survivors who had numbers tattooed on their arms, you can't be buried in a Jewish cemetery because you have a tattoo? It would be absurd. It would be absurd to say such a thing to any survivor, right? And so you shouldn't get a tattoo because the Torah says no. Some of the more liberal Jewish movements say, don't do it. I can't force you not to do it, but don't do it. The more strict denominations say don't do it, period. And piercings, a wide spectrum, but we do have piercings in the Torah. Maybe we'll take one more. Do we have one more question? Ellie.
I'm curious about the kashrut of fabric. I've been recently looking up shatnez, which is the verse about not mixing certain kinds of fiber together.
Mm-hmm.
What's the origin or what's the logic behind that?
So we have this principle called shatnez. It comes to us again from the Torah, it also in the book of Leviticus of laws of cleanliness and such. And the idea being this, that the Torah is concerned with, and therefore the rabbis of the Talmud are concerned with an idea of purity. Purity in everything that we do. The number of pages in the Talmud that mention purity, I can't tell you the exact number. It's in the hundreds of pages. The Talmud deals with everything in the universe, and there are hundreds of pages that mention purity. And so one of those purities is the purity of fabric. And so we have, and it usually it's around the summertime, I think, when we read it. We have Tazria Mitzora, which is a double portion in years that it gets doubled up. And it talks about lovely, wonderful things that when I have B'nai Mitzvah families who pick a date for the bar mitzvah, and then they come to me and they say, can we change the date? And I say, why do you want to change the date? I already know the answer to the question, but I ask anyway because it's fun. I say, well, we were looking at the Torah portion with our child, and we saw that it talks about sores and scabs and pus and bodily emissions. And our kid said, can't I talk about something else in my bar mitzvah speech other than that stuff? And I said, yeah, but you have to read a different Torah portion because that's all that's in there. So there's this idea of that if fabric of your tent gets infected with some sort of pus or bacteria and it becomes impure, then you have to cut the fabric out of the tent and replace it with similar fabric to keep it there. And there was a thought in ancient times, I'm not an expert in fabric, so I don't know if this is actually true or not, but I know it's true that they thought this, is that if you mix fabrics together, that they are more prone to these spores and molds and things when you sew things together. I have no idea if that is scientifically valid. My guess is that it's not, but I know nothing of that. But this was a thought that if you keep each thing pure to what it is, then you have that pure essence, so it's not going to be infected. Additionally, the rabbis talk about that mixing things in and of themselves can lead to impurity. How is that the case? That if you have fabrics that are only wool, that are only linen, that are only other things, then it's representative of the idea of also you should make food, some of the rabbis wrote, with a few ingredients only. Because the more ingredients, the more, they wouldn't call it bacteria back then, but the more chance there is of impurity because you have more things that you're mixing in. And so the rabbis had this idea, and it comes directly out of the Torah, of keeping things in their most simple state. And so that alleviates any thoughts of impurity, both in our own personal thoughts, but also in the mixing and building things together. It gets rid of this idea of possible impurity. And so shotnetz comes from this exact idea. And so it's why, when you go shopping, this leads to also other things where people engage in proof texting. They say, but the Torah says such and such about this issue or that issue, and it's often about a political issue. And then I respond to them and I say, so I want to know, have you checked the label on all your clothing to make sure that all your clothes, if we have to follow word for word the Torah, did you check your clothing on the labels to make sure that it's 100% wool or 100% linen or whatever it may be? Because if you're going to follow the other thing strictly, you have to follow that as well. But that's the basic principle, is a principle about purity. And you use the word kashrut of fabric, right? Kashrut, the word kosher, in Hebrew kasher, there is a word kosher in Hebrew, kosher. Kosher, a cheder kosher is a weight room in Hebrew. But kosher is a Yiddish pronunciation. The Hebrew word is kasher, and kasher means clean or fit. And so kashrut of a fabric would mean that the fabric is clean or the fabric is fit to be used for what it's going to be used for, whatever clothing or a tent or whatever else you're making, a blanket, whatever it may be, out of the fabric to keep. And the whole idea comes out of this principle of purity. And one last word on purity before we return to our service. All the things that we do about purity, whether it's purity of cloth, whether it's purity of food, whether it's purity of actions, whether it's a woman going to the mikvah after menstruation each month, whatever the purity thing might be, all of these actions that we do and these rituals of purity that we do, in and of themselves, they mean nothing. But when we go through these actions of purity, they're supposed to be symbolic for us to remind us in all these various ways to live our lives purely, to have pure thoughts and pure actions in what we do. And when we don't, to cleanse ourselves through prayer and through other actions as well. And so all of these things about purity, they're all ritualistic metaphors. They're ritualistic symbolism of keeping ourselves pure to walk in God's pathways. So there we go. Thank you all for some great questions. I hope we learned something. I did. I hope you learned a little something too. We'll continue on with our service. As we'll come to our closing prayers, page 586. We all rise. We turn to the bottom of the page for Aleinu. Aleinu l'shabeach l'adon hakol, latet g'dula l'yotzer breshit, shelo asanu kogoye ha'aratzot, v'lo samanu ki mishpachot ha'adama, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורל עלינו ככל המונם. ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא, שהוא נוטה שמיים ויוסר הארץ, ומושב יקרו בשמיים ממעל, ושכינתו זו בגובה מרומים, הוא אלוהינו אין עוד, עמד מלכנו את וסולתו, ככתוב בתורתו, וידעת היום והשיבות אל לבביך, כי אדוני הוא האלוהים בשמיים ממעל, ועל הארץ מתחת אין עוד. Page 590. כי המלכות שלך היא עולמי תמלוך בכבוד, ככתוב בתורתך, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד, ונאמר, והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו אחד, ושמו אחד. We can all be seated. We turn in our Siddur to page 598. In our yard sites this week, we recall the memories of Harold Piernick, Rachel Sikorsky, Betty Mullen, Harold Bernard, Fenton Kaufman, Jean Gillick, Nathan Pophauser, Ralph Evans, Edward Fields, Edward Laberwitt, Fran Ader, Jacob Fine, Esther Strick, Goldie Berland, Hilda Zimmerman, Irving Goodman, Jim Hindman, Morris Rayfield, Azaria Chumash, Betty Waldbaum, Eddie Fuhr, Anna Goodstein, Celia Galoff, Diesel Sugarman, Esther Schmemmerman, and Mary Ella Kemper. Are there any other yard sites that anybody is observing this week? Yehi Zichronam Levarcha, may their memories be an eternal blessing. We ask mourners to rise, and those whose custom it is to stand with them as well, as we, in their memory, sanctify God's name. Page 598. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shmei rabbah, be'alma divra chirutei v'yamlich malchutei, b'chaye echon u'vyom echon u'v'chaye d'chol beit Yisrael, ba'agala v'zman kari v'imru amen. Yehi shmei rabbah mavorach le'olam olamei almaya, yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, v'yithadar v'yitale v'yithalal shmei d'kudusha b'richu, le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, da'amiran be'alma v'yimru amen. Yehi shalama rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'yimru amen. Oseh shalom bimromav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'yimru amen. You can all be seated. Eric's got a few announcements from our board of directors, things coming up in the very near future here at Temple Shalom.
Some of them in the near future indeed. Okay, Shabbat Shalom. Thank you for joining us this Erev Shabbat service. If you are new or visiting Temple Shalom for the first time, welcome. Please join us for the oneg so that we can introduce ourselves and get to know you. Thank you, Rabbi Jay Sherwood, for leading us this evening and for Ask the Rabbi Shabbat. Thanks for everyone who participated in the service and for asking questions. It always makes this the special Shabbat that it is. First and foremost, today, right now, is the last day to put your order in for Mahjong cards. To get your Mahjong cards, contact Karen Kaplan-Weiss. There is a large print or a regular print option. Our next movie is this Sunday, again, like 2 days from now, February 2nd. Ain't No Back to a Merry-Go-Round is the title. Go to templeshalom.com to register. It's $15 for pre-registration or $20 at the door for adults, and children 12 and under are free. Registration will be left open until almost the last minute for this screening. Next Shabbat, 1 week, February 7th and 8th, is Scout Shabbat at Temple Shalom. All scouts are invited, youth and adult, from all scouting organizations. Please wear your uniform, and all are invited to participate. Let Rabbi Jay know if you are willing to participate in the service by reading a prayer. Register at templeshalom.com. Next up is the local Colorado Springs Hadassah on Thursday, February 20th at 4:30 p.m. It's a presentation, Stress Management, Practical Approaches to Relieve Everyday Stress with Lindsay Karnick. Look for more information in the weekly email. Then, right after that is the Pickleball Havurah. The next meeting is Sunday, February 23rd from 4 to 6 p.m. at the Barrel Building. Alan Davidson and Susan Eisenman are your contact people if you want to get more information into RSVP. The Boker Tov Sunday Club is also having an event on Sunday, February 23rd, but this one is earlier, 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. You can register for it now on templeshalom.com. We are going to have a guest speaker, Anna Guerevich, who, among other things, is a volunteer at the Shoah Foundation. And then non-date specific things. Our security is heightened. Please continue additional support beyond your security fees. Thank you to everyone who has donated extra to our security fund to date. If you know of any temple members who are ill, hospitalized, or suffering from a loss, please contact the temple office so that we can be sure to provide encouragement and support. Many thanks to our Oneg mavens. Hi, Judy. This evening, who has contributed to our Oneg, and Shabbat Shalom.
I don't think so. I think that's all of it. You should all come to the movie on Sunday. It's a really, really good movie about an interesting piece of history. So if you're not doing anything Sunday afternoon, change your plans and come. If you are doing something, cancel that and come to the movie. I don't know, but it is. It's a really fantastic movie, and it's, like I said, a really, really interesting piece of history. So come join us for that. Page 625, yes. Oh, yes.
That is actually featured in the movie and was one of the protesters.
Right. So one of the people who was a protester that the movie's about is going to be here as a speaker. So it's about a merry-go-round that they said no black people are allowed to be on the merry-go-round. This is it's a couple of years before Martin Luther King was marching with and there were Jews that were part of the protest. It's an interesting thing, and one of the people that was a protester is going to be here to talk. So come and check it out. It's going to be a really very, very cool program on Sunday. Page 625. Adon Olam Asher Malach B'Terem Kol Tzir Nivra B'Eit Nasa B'Chefza Kol Azai Melech Shemo Nikra Ve'acharei Kiklot HaKol Levado Loch Nora Hu Haya Hu Oved Ve'hu Yeh B'Tifara Adon Olam Asher Malach B'Terem Kol Yitzui Nivra Li'eit Naso Chefza Kol Azai Melech Shemo Nikra V'acharei Kiklot HaKol Levado Yimloch Nora V'hu Haya V'hu Oved V'hu Yeh B'Tifara Adon Olam Asher Malach B'Terem Kol Yitzui Nivra Li'eit Naso Chefza Kol Azai Melech Shemo Nikra V'acharei Kiklot HaKol Levado Yimloch Nora V'hu Haya V'hu Oved V'tifara, v'hu haya v'hu hoveh, v'tifara. V'hu echad, ve'ein sheni, ve'hamshir lo, ve'hakbira, v'reishi, v'tachli, v'lo ha'oz, v'hamisra, v'hu eli, v'chai go'ali, v'tzur chevli, v'etzara, v'hu nisi, umanos li, v'nat kosi, v'yom ekra, v'yado, afid ruchi, v'eiti shan, v'aira, v'imruchi, v'vihati, Adonai li, v'lo ira. Adon olam asher malach b'terem yitzuni rali eit nasa v'chefsa kol azay melech shimonik v'yacharek l'totako v'vado yimlok narav v'hu ayav v'hu ovel v'hu yev'tifar Adon olam asher malach b'terem kol yitzuni rali eit nasa v'chefsa kol azay melech shimonik v'yacharek l'totako v'vado yimlok narav v'hu ayav v'hu ovel v'tifara v'hu ayav v'hu ovel v'tifara v'hu ayav v'hu ovel v'tifara. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Please join us for Kiddush and Motzi in the back of the room. I was going to tell Ellie I could do another 20 minutes on Arts Kol Tzva'am, Ve'echol Elohim B'yom HaShiv L'To Asher Asa, V'yishbot B'yom HaShiv Mikom L'To Asher Asa, V'yavarech Elohim Et Yom HaShiv V'kidesh Oto, Ki Vo Shabbat Mikom L'To Asher Bara Elohim La'asot Savri Chavirai L'chaim, Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech HaOlam, Borei Peri HaGafen, Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech HaOlam, Asher Kitchanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu v'shabbat kodsho be'ahava uvratzon hinchilanu zikaron lema'aseh v'reishi ki hu yom techila lemikra kodesh zecher l'tziyat mitzrayim ki vanu v'charta v'yotanu kidashta Mikol ha'amin v'shabbat kodshecha be'ahava uvratzon hinchaltan Baruch atah Adonai mikadesh hashabbat. Well, yeah. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, hamotzi lechem min haaretz. B'tevon Shabbat Shalom. Come everyone, have a little challah, have a little snacks. Shabbat Shalom to everyone.